Why is
Yeah.
it overrated? You know what I mean?
You're going to open one as one way or another.
One out of 100. Makes sense. It's some kind of fundamental calculus.
Right, guys, welcome to the It's More Than Just Money movement channel, where we delve into conversations with entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and game changers who are making a difference in the South African business landscape and abroad. My name is Witness Mtaka, and I am your host today. I'm sitting with a self-made property mogul. His name is Rali Mampeule, and he hails from Limpopo, South Africa, built a name for himself in the South African business fraternity. He's done a lot of international global work, and he's also the chairman of the Mampeule Foundation and also the CEO of a company that has a very long name. I think it's the South African Housing Infrastructure.
Yeah. Well, we've got two funds. One is the South African Housing and Infrastructure Fund,
Yes,
short name SAHIF.
Sahif.
Yeah, and then we've got the continental one that is called the African Housing and Infrastructure Fund, AHIF. Yes.
So somebody who usually would more specifically getting into create funds is because they have seen the value of creating those within specific communities to drive change.
Yeah.
What inspired that particular aspect of your career?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is that, as you may be aware, Innocent, is that in South Africa and also in the continent, we have about 2.5 million housing shortfall in South Africa. Continentally, about 50 million housing units still needs to be built. So part of our fund is an impact fund that basically looks into affordable housing, infrastructure development, that obviously include things like bridges, airports, and other amenities that can be able to support our residential development so that people can be able to work, live, and play where they stay. So as an impact fund, we saw that opportunity that we need to be able to go out there, raise money. And of course, we put our own investments as well so that we can be able to accelerate delivery of affordable housing in South Africa.
So through that, and before you even got to that, you had already built an incredible real estate empire. You know, can you take us back to the beginning, how you got started in real estate and what actually motivated you? I know you mentioned when we were talking earlier on that you started when you were 21. I mean, at 21, people are going to clubs and having fun. What motivated you to get into real estate at such a young age?
You know, Innocent, just to go back, I mean, if we look at where things are now, and I'll take us down to where it all started, but
I
you
look
know-
innocent, but I'm witness.
Sorry, you're a witness, yes. You do look in. But yeah, sorry about that. But the key thing that I wanted to say is that, I'm currently chairing an institution at the University of Johannesburg, our center, which is called SMACT, where we basically helping young people to learn about real estate. So I chair that. I sit at the board of Metro Fiber, which is a fiber business. My wife and I have been founded a foundation called the Global Surgery Foundation with the founding donor. That foundation is based out in Switzerland. And, we've done a lot of stuff in the continent and in the world. But the key thing is that I was born in Mojaji at a village called Mokwaseli. And I was very fortunate enough to have born in a village and, to
Is
learn.
Mujaji Tsan inside?
This is in Limpopo, in Zanin side.
Tsanin, okay.
Yeah. So from the royal family of Mojaji, the reign queen.
You're also from the royal family?
I'm Prince Rali Mampeule.
Oh, okay.
I never use the title.
And I'm sure
but,
a lot of people don't know about it.
people don't know
Because
about
you never
it.
say it.
And I hardly speak about it, but yeah, I'm from the royal family. Our family, Mampeule, is part of the families that make up the the royal family of Mujaji. My dad sits in the council. And yeah, I know there's some challenges right now, but those things have been worked out and certain decisions have been made. So there's a lot of developments that is taking place in that space. But yeah, I'm a Prince Mampeule. But, you know, later on, obviously with my dad was working in Johannesburg. So I joined him later on, Kokena, what we call Standard 1. I guess I'm giving my age. You know,
Standard 1 is not grade
I think it's
3.
I think it's grade 3.
Yes.
So ka fitela ko pleke ko ka se ba reng ke Davidton. We call it Vuta in Davidton. So that's where I arrived when I got to Joburg. And I think I was about 8 years old. And I grew up there and I ended up doing my studies at local school there, but Kimilodi Primary School. Later on, I went to high school, go Binoni High. And that's, you know, when things were changing in the country, I was fortunate enough to be able to study in those schools, go Binoni High. When my brother got back from the US to study, he gave me the opportunity to stay with him in the suburb, Goran Park Ridge. But I did my matric there in Rand Park Ridge. But the
Joburg North
point,
now.
yeah, Joburg North. The point I'm trying to make here, and obviously I then end up studying at Harvard in the US. But the reason why I'm giving you all this background is because I feel I'm very fortunate enough to have had the opportunity to be able to be a village boy, a township boy, and what, you know, what where we most of people are now, or generally people are staying in what we call the suburbs. And obviously we've traveled a little bit of the world and studied overseas, but that gives you a perspective, a different way on how you look at life, because you can easily be able to relate to a lot of people who are coming from different walks of life. So that's where it started. So I was very fortunate enough to then I've met a gentleman by the name of Charles Everett, who owns a company called Chairs Everett then. He's late now. May his soul rest in peace.
The real estate company.
The real estate company, Chairs Everett. Yeah, so that's where my career started.
So take us through from the beginning when you met him,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing you met him and then he introduced you to the business of real estate. And I'm guessing also that you started off as an agent because he was running an agency. And how did that then influence your career in real estate?
Yeah, very interesting. So when I met Mr. Charles Everett, I was doing my matric. And just like most kids...
Where are you meeting him at this stage?
So
Rand Park Ridge?
Rand Park Ridge.
In the
that's
suburbs.
In the suburbs. That's his headquarters.
Yes.
So I was working back home and I was staying with my brother there because he just gotten back from the US, as I mentioned. But I was fortunate enough because he was trying to sell his house.
Your brother?
My brother.
Yes.
So I met an agent called Paul Everett. And I asked him, Paul, how does it work to be in real estate? It's something that as Black people were not aware of as much as, other races. And he then told me, and obviously I met lawyers and doctors at that year so that I can be able to look at different options that I have to study further post my matric. He told me about the real estate. It was quite interesting for me, the difference that you can make, the network, of course, the money that you can be able to make. I then decided that post that, instead of me going to work at Pick and Pay while I'm waiting for my results, I can work as an assistant estate agent. And just before we got our results, I joined them as an assistant estate agent, and I was doing drops in places like Randburg.
What's a drop?
Drop, yeah, sorry. Again, I'm giving my age. So now I know we use things like emails and social media. So we used to physically do dropping of pamphlets. So the people that you see on the street giving you pamphlets, I was doing that, but we would go into each and every house in Bryanston, Randburg, and actually doing those drops into different houses so that you can be able to call the agent that I was working under. His name was Colin Rogers. So I did those drops for about 6 months or so. I then became an assistant estate agent sitting on houses during the Sundays showrooms. And later on, I think a year later, I became an estate agent, now starting to sell my own units around Bryanston at that time.
So a lot of people often describe you as a self-made property mogul. What were some of the challenges that you faced? Sometimes we look at somebody and we love the story. We wanna be part of the glory, right? But the glory has a story behind it.
That's so true, yeah.
For you, what do you think were some of the defining moments and that challenged you in your come up to becoming what they describe as a property mogul?
So I'm quite interested in the fact that the term property mogul, I see myself as a real estate entrepreneur. And I know there are terms out there that, maybe the
You
media...
do know they call you property mogul, right?
Well, I see it, but I'm a real estate entrepreneur, and thank you, and I guess that's humbling. But the point is that, yes, we started from, I used to sell even Beautiful's rolls. So I was doing my BCom with UNISA during the times where, between me being an assistant estate agent, I then post that, I then enrolled with UNISA so that I can be able to work and study part-time. So when I was doing my undergraduate degree for BCom with UNISA, I used to sell Beautiful's rolls on the side of the road because I came to Midrand, then we used to call it Midrand University.
MGI.
MGI.
You went to MGI?
I went to MGI.
I went to MGI too.
For the first year, I did my my undergraduate
What year
first
was
there.
this?
I think it should have been
99?
No, 2001.
Okay.
Okay. So I was doing that. But during that time, I was also selling Beautiful's rolls on the side of the road in Midrand with my younger sisters. And that was quite exciting. So, yes, we started from the bottom and still a long way to go. And so that's where there was, so that's where I actually started because I needed to make sure as well that as I'm selling houses, it takes time for you to be able to be paid your commission. I mean, you'll know the
True.
space. So I wanted to make sure that I can be able to work on a liquidity event. And I did that for about a year and a half and until I built my businesses. And we can talk about it later on because I was then given an opportunity to be able to buy a franchise for Ches Everett in Midrand.
What is it that actually qualified you for that opportunity?
Yeah.
I know a lot of people will say people like you, I mean, he was lucky that he got that opportunity.
Yes.
But forgetting that there was a process that was followed for you to get to the point where in your life you were offered an opportunity like that. What had you done as a young 21, 22-year-old to be afforded that kind of opportunity?
I when I was working with Mr. Everett, I basically said to him, after a year and 2 years of working with him, I said, I see an opportunity in Midrand because I was studying here, and I see that you don't have a branch, Mr. Everett, in Midrand.
Also,
Can I
there
be
was
able-
no branch in Midrand
There was no
at
branch
the time.
in Midrand, yes.
Yes.
So I then, at that time, we were just under 2% black participation in the real estate space. I then said to Mr. Everett, can I be able to buy a franchise? He said, but Rali, you don't even have a car. How are you going to be able to buy a franchise? At that time, buying a franchise was almost the same price as buying a McDonald's. I then struck a deal with Mr. Everett, and I always tell young people to say, you do not need money to make money in a business, but also in real estate. I did a deal with Mr. Everett whereby I said to him, can I be able to be in a situation where I'm able to buy this franchise and pay you over a period of time? And he agreed, and he said, but how are you going to have a working capital? I brought in two partners, my brother and another CEO of Ches Everett Franchises, Mr.
Your big
Barry
brother?
Davis. Yeah, my big brother.
Yes.
I sold them 20% of my business for about 250K, and I used that as a working capital. Within a space of a year, I had an opportunity to sell a development that I made myself about 7 million rand at the age of 21. I was then able to pay off my franchise.
Where was the development? Was it in Midrand?
It was in Midrand.
Which one is it?
So if you look at places like Villa Montego,
Yes.
in that area on Beggar Street, there was one development there. I think it was called Saint something. I think it was Saint Martin's or something. But there was a Jewish developer, Jerry Baker, who approached me and said, can you sell this development for me? When I did the numbers, I realized there's about 100K difference between the numbers that he wanted to sell the units at. And I said, Jerry,
And the value of the properties
And
in the area.
precisely.
Yes.
So it was below the market really. And then I asked him, he said, no, I've done my model. This is what I want to sell the units for. I then said, Jerry, can I buy this unit for you? And I think it was about a deal of, I think the value at that time was something like 30 million rand. So you can imagine at 21, I'm making an offer to buy a development with no money. I still owe the franchise fee and the purchase price of the franchise. But he gave me an opportunity to buy the development. What I then did over a space of 90 days.
How did you buy it?
So I made an offer and I said to Jerry, can give me 90 days for me to be able to give you the guarantees. At that time, it was before the NCR, where I knew that there's opportunities to be able to get people to be in a position where I can support them to be able to buy 4 units at using the same salary. It was allowed, so that we can be able to get tenants that can stay in those units. So in a space of 3 months, I'd gone out and made sure that I can get people to come and buy these units. So I'll have weekends.
So you put in an offer,
Yeah.
and then after putting in that offer, you sold the units based on the offer that you had put in. So now you are no longer operating as an agent, but
Yes.
now as an investor.
As an investor. So I had bought the units myself,
Yes.
and then I did this weekend get
There's
together.
a term for that. I think I'm forgetting.
Well, at that time, we didn't have terms. I was an entrepreneur. I just saw the opportunity to say I can buy this thing for 1 rand and I can sell it for 150.
Correct. Yeah.
So that's what I saw. And the term, we call it bootstrapping now.
Yes.
At that time, I didn't know that it's called bootstrapping. But just to summarize, I then bought these units. I managed to sell them within a space of 90 days, and I gave Jerry Baker.
You sold all the units.
We sold
within
all the
90 days.
units. Okay, during that time, it was this was in the year 2000, 2002.
How many units were there?
There was about I think there was about 60 units.
60 units.
Yes.
You sold
So
all of them in 90 days.
We sold them in 90 days. But remember, so we'll come to you and say, hey, we can help you to be able to buy 5 units at a go, and we'll take those offer to purchase to like 5 banks using the same salary, and then you will back that by a lease. So there's a lot of people that were coming in here. There were students as well that were coming from Botswana, that they were getting paid for accommodation and school fees by their own government. So there was a lot of influx of students that were coming from Botswana that were looking for accommodation. We'll then get the leases, and then we'll get the investors to buy about 5 units. So we had a lot of people that bought those units as investors. And
I found the term back to back.
well, you can call it back to back, but at the
Yes.
end of the day, it's exactly that, and it's legal. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about it at a later stage, because I end up getting in trouble in selling some of the
Because
big
you
piece
did
of
that
land.
with the government,
With
but
the
we'll get
government.
into that
Yeah.
with that government deal.
So I did that when I was young.
Yeah.
And it was legal because I had learned that
It's
you can
still legal.
Yeah, it's still legal.
Yeah.
You know, some media houses want to make it illegal, but I think I had an opportunity to take them to school and actually
Teach them.
teach them. you
Yeah.
know. So we'll talk about it. But the bottom line is that that's what I did. So I went to Jerry Baker. I gave him the guarantees. I had then be able to manage to sell the units for 7 million rand more. I gave him the guarantees. There were, I think at that time I had to give him about 48 individual guarantees because people had to go. And I had a law firm, I think at that time was Rocha Kutsi Attorneys, that they were here on New Road. Tez from Rocha gave Jerry Baker the guarantees and say, I've delivered. And then I made myself 7 million rand at the age of 21. I made a joke with him and I said, Jerry, remember you said to me that you don't know how I'm going to be able to afford this thing. So I wasn't a estate agent at that time. So you're going to have to pay me commission.
On top of
On top of
Yes,
the deal.
yes. So
Because I brought you as a deal. And funny enough, Jerry Baker gave me an extra 1 million rand for doing the deal. And he was happy. His guarantees were paid on time. And that's where my career was launched. And I had the opportunity to be able to, obviously being in real estate, starting to invest in buying land around the country, in the Kuruleni, and we'll talk about it at a later stage because some of those land at a later stage were even valued at more than hundreds and hundreds of millions of rands.
where did you get the foresight to structure the deal the way you did? I mean, you could have gone. Your mentor was an estate agent,
Yeah.
who owned an agency,
Yeah.
right? So the teaching around that could have been the traditional way of selling property. I'm going to sell this, get a commission. However, you went in it now no longer as an agent, but as an investor
Yeah.
that says, I'm putting an offer, and against this offer, I'm going to sell all these units.
Yeah. You know, in hindsight, I didn't really know what was going on at that time. As I said earlier on, all I could see and all I knew was that there is a good markup on some of the units. And then I then made sure that how do I then extract that value? And, you know, I don't know, as you can debate if entrepreneurship is born, but, you know, my gut feel just told me that there's an opportunity for you to be able to sell these units. But I knew that there's a demand of influx of students that are looking for accommodation. Just like now, we have a lot of students who are looking for accommodation for student village opportunities. I also knew that there's a lot of people that want to get into property investment. I also knew that there's this gap, between the price, and I had to make sure that I can connect all the dots so that we are able to do the deal. And that's exactly what had happened. So I don't know if you want to call it a gut feel, but that was just happened. But it changed my life. I then managed to be able to pay off my franchise fee with Mr. Everett within the 1 year period where he allowed me to pay my franchise fee over a period of time. I managed to buy out my brother and Barry Davis out of the business. They made some money for themselves. And I then owned the Chess Everett franchise branch by myself, 100%. And we moved that franchise into turnovers of, say, 350 million rand in a space of 3 years. And then I sold it back to the Everetts and started my own investment holding company called Padima Group Holdings. And that's where everything changes, and we started to formalize our business and really get into the real estate.
Okay. I love that, and it's quite inspiring, especially where a lot of you guys that are watching would always be wondering how certain deals are structured with no money down. And that's exactly what we also teach in our book. It's more than just money. Remember, guys, you can find the book in the comment section. There's a link where you would be able to purchase the book either on Takealot or on our website, www.witnessmtaka.com, or it's more than just money.com. Head out there, buy the book, read up as much as you can. We started this channel specifically for conversations like this, to be exposed to you guys so that you too can take the information and apply it in different areas of your life. So now you've started Padima Group.
Yeah.
Right, you've transitioned now. You've run an agency, you've made millions of money. Now you are, in your own words, formalizing. Why at this particular point in time do you feel that was now formal rather than what you had been doing?
So initially, you can remember, I started as an estate agent, just selling houses. I was an assistant estate agent, doing marketing and dropping pamphlets. And I now needed to have a structure. What I mean by that, to start looking at real estate holistically. So obviously, with a bit of owner's contribution, I was then able to invest in certain types of businesses. So I had to have an investment holding company called Padima Group Holdings. We then started to buy land in Ekurhuleni. We started looking at affordable housing and now becoming property developers. So, just moving away.
Were you buying land in Ekurhuleni?
Yeah, I bought a lot of land in Ekurhuleni because that's where I come from, and it was quite affordable because part of those land was still agricultural piece of land. So that
Belonging to the government or just...
Well, belonging to farmers. Most
Farmers,
of them
okay.
would belong to farmers, would be in the plots. One of them was in liquidation. F&B owned that piece of land and we bought it. And we went through the processes of actually doing the town planning processes, getting it ready. And it takes a couple of years. Sometimes it can take close to 5 years in South Africa.
Was
to
that you
get
now
land ready.
transitioning into property development?
Into property development,
Yes. Take us through that. So when you were buying the pieces of land that were farming land, were you buying it as a store of value for your money, or you were buying it with the sole purpose of later transforming and developing it?
So obviously, as an estate agent, I had an opportunity to be exposed to developers, and I could see the numbers that they're doing and the work that they're putting in. And I started to get an interest in myself becoming a property developer. And I still kept my franchise business before I can actually sell it. And once I knew that we have some great land that were ready, and that's when I sold it, and I used some of that money to become a property developer. So when I was buying the land, I was buying with the intention of doing townhouses, clusters. Again, there was a need for units that were under 500,000 at that time. So
What year is this?
So now we are probably now talking 2000, 2004, 2002, 2003 to 2004.
Yes, I was in
I think
grade 8.
I think at that time I was either 20, 23, 24,
Sure.
But with the whole process of that took long for us to be able to get the rights. We end up leaving those lands for future development and for future investment. One of them was sold at a later stage for over 250 million rand. And we'll talk about that as well because some of those...
Let's talk about it now. So you were buying up this land for development purposes.
Mm.
So I'm guessing you're doing mixed developments, residential developments. And what I want to know is, was there also some commercial developments that actually added more value to the land than what it originally was?
Yeah, so at that time, I knew that we were doing what we call integrated development. So when we do the application with the local authorities, we'll always say this section will be a school, this section will be just like what you see in Waterfall here at a smaller scale where we have other amenities. Like I said earlier on, that we were, I always make sure that when we do development, it can be able to support the people that are going to buy those units to be able to get a job in that area so they can be able to afford to stay in the area. So we always try. So at that time, we'll have the different rights. So there'll be an office section, there'll be a commercial, maybe retail space, there'll be a residential space. And how we did that was to make sure that we can be able to sell a portion of the zoned retail space to a retail developer, be able to recoup some cash so that we can be able to do our own residential development. We'll sell the hotel site, if there was a hotel site, to a hotel group. We'll sell the hospital site to a hospital group, because at that time we didn't have enough capital to be able to do all those developments. And with that income, we were then able to do units that were for affordable housing, so that we can be able to get the dream of accelerating delivery of affordable housing, because our target market was units that were still under 500,000 during those times.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then how do you get to a point where some of this land, you're selling it for 100 million, 200 million, 300 million?
Yeah.
I saw somewhere that you even sold land for 350 million.
Yes. No, we did that. So what has happened is, I said, some of these developments were delayed for about 5 years. But that time, our country was also starting to sort of step in making sure that they are able, they wanted to make sure that there's this thing called the RDP houses, and they wanted land.
Establishing new
ready.
townships.
Establishing new townships.
Yes.
So what became an attraction to us was that we had land that we bought years back that was now ready and ripe for development. So the only one other option that institutions and government agencies and government themselves directly were then keen on buying those land. So we may have bought the piece of land maybe for 5, 6, 16 million rand, 20 million rand, but because we added value over a period of time of 5, 6 years, you are then able to, sometimes even close to 10 years. I've got a piece of land now that we've been trying to do rezoning for the last 10 years in Zanin, So at that time, you've added value because you probably maybe have brought in bulk infrastructure on the site of the development. You've done the services on the development. You've gotten the rights. And at that time now, when you get 3 independent valuers, they come and do the valuation. Now the land is no longer worth 16 million rand. Maybe it's worth 150 million rand. Maybe it's worth 250 million rand. So if 3 valuations speak to that language, that's the price that you're able to sell in. So it's like mining a piece of land. You can have land, but you need to be able to do geotech. You need to be able to drill. You need to be able to take out that gold and maybe sell it. So buying and selling of land is almost like mining.
So earlier on, you mentioned the fact that journalists started to grill you for those deals.
Yeah.
Was it because they thought there's some sort of corruption or overpricing that's
Yeah.
happening around that?
The country during the period that we sort of made those headlines about maybe selling some of the land at a higher price was granted. There's a lot of corruption and everybody was on the edge. The journalists were on the edge. So if you then say, I don't know if I was a young man, but here's a young man selling a piece of land. He happened to be black for 250 million rand, as they say, 350 million rand. It becomes something that you want to have a look at it to say, what is this thing? But obviously, people don't know the background where you've started, that actually this you did when you were 22, 23. You've invested in it. You were losing money because that money I could have put in the bank and made more money, but I left it in a piece of land. So
Unserviced.
unsavers
yes.
have to go through the whole process, and losing a potential income because it's cash that is stuck on a piece of land. So I understood that. And what we did, we answered the question. Funny enough, there was not even a case that was open. I don't remember anyone calling me the Hawks or anyone calling me to say, Mr. Mampeule, we want to ask you a question about this piece of land. Never at all. So I called them.
So your land was expropriated with compensation.
With compensation. So and it was a fair deal. I mean, you must remember, South Africa is a very regulated space. So you can't just sell land that you say you bought for 50 million rand, you can sell it for 350 million
And
rand.
there's no value added to
And there's
it.
no value added to it. There's no processes. So you have independent valuers who belong to a regulator, just like you'll have CAs who are accountable to their own regulator, and then you'll be able to have lawyers who are accountable to the Law Society. The valuers of this country also have a section where they report to their regulator, just like we report to what we what's the new name
State
now?
agency
Affairs board,
yeah.
with a new name. So in that case, the three valuers will come and do independent valuers do valuations and say this is the value that we're finding, and then they'll combine the three independent valuers and be able to take a common price that everybody agrees to. And then that's where you have a willing buyer, willing seller. And those were the numbers that we were hitting, but we added value long time ago before we can even sell that. But the point that we wanted to make sure is to make sure that we can be able to speed up the accelerating delivery of affordable housing in South Africa.
And your mindset in terms of your relationship with success then, what was it? You know, when you look at the Black society, we have a good relationship with struggle. Like we understand struggle. But I feel a lot of us don't have a good relationship with success, especially success at the height of where you were reaching. What was your mindset then? Did you have a mentor that was taking you through these things? Someone who had already done those deals before? Or were you just finding your way as a young person, making a lot of money?
Witness, part of what I've seen is that I was lucky enough to have met my wife almost 25 years ago. Okay?
Your wife was your mentor?
I'm not saying that. But she motivated me
Yeah.
to be able to do certain things. So instead of just having one engine or mind looking at something, I had two engines that were looking at something in terms of due diligence and other things. But she motivated me to really be able to do better, because already I felt that there was a responsibility that I have to make sure that she looks after me and I look after her. And this was before we got married. So I've known my wife for now 25 years. We are married 15 years. We've got two young boys, Letabo and Wahile. And at that time, we got married, and she was now already my responsibility.
You met when you were about 20?
We met when she was 18. She had just finished her matric. We dated for about 10 years before we can get married, because we were young. She was coming from high school as well. And I was in my first year or so of varsity. So we had a long runway before we can take off in terms of marriage. So we got married 10 years later. I think I was 26, and I think she's 4 years younger than me, or 3 years younger than me.
Must have been 32 then. 30, 32.
No. I think, yeah. No, it's about 15 years ago.
Yes.
So my wife and I have known each other for 25 years, but we married for about 15 years now.
Yes.
This year. So we dated for 10 years and we got married 15 years. Okay. So in total, I've known her. She's known me for 25 years. So during that 25 years, she was there to support me. And that was one of my drives. So we'll sit down and I'll be able to make some notes on my diary to say, this month I want to sell 3 units. This month I want to sell 4 units. This is the development I want to do. And she was just right there for me. And obviously then we also got kids. So that responsibility helped you to say, the only way you can be able to do this is to really work hard and make sure that you achieve the dreams. And so I had responsibility when I was already young. And that really drove me into pushing. But the other thing that I've also seen at that time when I was a youngster is that a lot of reading books, and I think you've got a book that you mentioned earlier on. These are the books that young people and other people should be able to look at and maybe read this book. So I had a lot of motivation during the time from, believe it or not, from people like Robert Kiyosaki. So I used to read the typical Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. Donald Trump was a big real estate developer in New York at that time.
Out of the deal.
Exactly. So I was reading those books. And funny enough, when I won the South African Property Profession of the Year, Nedbank Property Profession of the Year, I started a foundation called the Rali Mampeule Learnership, where we were bringing new blood into the old vein of real estate. And one of the things that I regret not having done, witness, was that I wanted to bring Donald Trump to South Africa to come and actually do a talking session. And I was in final stages of doing that.
And you had the resources to do it.
I had the resources to do it, but just like any other thing, everything got postponed and I've never done it. And I think maybe today
He would be your
you will
friend.
know South Africa in a different way. And I
Sure.
think some of the things that are happening now, he'll have a different perception. And so that he's able to make neutral decisions about our country. But maybe I'll be having his WhatsApp number now because obviously as a speaker, and I was going to host him when he goes back, would have kept in touch. So that didn't happen. So that's one of my regrets that I have in my career.
Sure. So
But those were the books that I was reading.
so there's a quote.
Yeah.
It says, "The opportunity of a lifetime must be seized in the lifetime of that opportunity."
Wow.
Relating it to what you just narrated about Trump,
Yeah.
and then hearing the opportunity of a lifetime must be seized in the lifetime of that opportunity.
Wow.
What does that say to you?
Well, it just says don't postpone things. You know, to me, it talks to the fact that if today you're sitting there at home and you're saying, you know what, let me get up. I'm not getting a job. Let me go look at other sectors. This could include you going and drive a motorbike to go deliver Uber Eats. Today, you start somewhere. Young people are making between 10 and 13,000 rand delivering Uber Eats. And most of those people are people that are coming from outside South Africa. Some of our young people are not taking those opportunities. Yes, it's risky, but it is better than you sitting at home. So today you can start by maybe driving that motorbike or a bicycle to go and deliver a pizza for someone and make yourself 10, 13,000 rand for yourself. But later on, end up maybe owning a logistic company that actually does buy bikes that can deliver the pizzas. That's how we started. We started trying to do the marketing and doing handouts in the streets and also in houses.
There's an opportunity.
But there was an opportunity for me to end up owning a real estate company and actually becoming a property developer in the same sector. So that saying says to me, don't postpone things.
How did that opportunity help you to learn to identify high value deals when you grew in the property industry?
Yeah. You know, so real estate is it's a sector where, and one of the things that attracted me about real estate is that you talk big numbers. You know, it's like, you know, it's your biggest investment in your lifetime, just buying your own house. Beside you building a new city or a new township development. But, you know, I've always looked at real estate in a different way because I had opportunities to be able to develop real estate, commercial developments, shopping centers. We were one of the first group in South Africa, which these days I don't really admire saying you're the first black person to do this, you're the first person to do that, because I think we need to all move away from that and actually be able to bring new blood into the you know, in real estate to be able to make a difference. But we developed a commercial office block in Waterfall called Waterfall Point. We were the first people to company, not necessarily that is black, but a company that partnered with ATAC because they're the sole developers of Waterfall. But we had an opportunity to be able to strike a deal where we bought a 350 million rand development or called Waterfall Point and did that development. So, but I realized that the numbers are great and you're doing well, but the impact that you can have in affordable housing, I looked at it as an opportunity. One of my friends used to make a joke and say, you know, build for the poor, you live with the rich. Build for the rich, you live with the poor. And that resonated with me in two folds. One is that building affordable housing is an impact investment opportunity, but there's a need of people looking for housing. There's a 2.5 million housing shortfall. There's 50 million housing shortfall deficit in the continent. So we went to that space where we wanted to make sure that we can be able to accelerate delivery of affordable housing in South Africa and in the continent. So I moved away from the big numbers, but also into doing impact investment. And that's really has paid off, you know, and we can talk about it later on because within real estate, there's a lot of opportunities that you can be able to diversify into.
So is that why you have combined work that has got a social impact but driving profit. 'Cause
Precisely.
when I look at your work, it seems like that. There's a lot of social
Yeah.
impact, but there's also a lot of profit in it. So it's like you're taking care of the soul
Yes.
while
While you're
making
making a
money in
living
the
as well.
process.
Yeah. So my wife and I founded the Mampeule Foundation, which has really helped a lot of students to go to school. We've taken about 75 kids to universities who are now graduated and are working. We were the founding donor of the Global. We are the founding donor of the Global Surgery Foundation. We've built 72 houses during COVID that we donated in Krugersdorp, in Rudeport, that managed to accommodate about 300 people that were living in tented units. So we've given back, and we still continue to give back. And part of what we want to do as going forward is that we realize that the students that have graduated don't have employment. So we are shifting to look at helping students to reskill, to look at other skills that they can be able to get employment. But what we are now passionate about is developing the rural areas. So we're going to spend a lot of time doing rural developments and actually helping people in the rural areas to be able to get a better life. So we are running an impact investment fund that accelerates delivery of affordable housing. And now we're also into the telecommunications/digital infrastructure, where we are also saying, while we're building this house, let's connect our people with internet.
So property flipping, buy and hold strategy. What's your take?
Yeah, very interesting, because that's one of the topics that sort of made headlines into what we call flipping. Really, there's nothing wrong with flipping land. There are shows in the US that call flipping, you know? So it's something that is a common trade. So I learned from a lot of property investors when I was young as well. You know, some of the stuff that we didn't talk about is that there were opportunities where you go buy a unit at an auction in the morning for 300,000, 400,000. And in the evening, the uncle of that daughter who may have lost the house calls you and says, "See that you bought the unit. I want to buy it back for my daughter or for whoever. She made a mistake. She went through a hard time. We want to buy it for 400,000." You use the same money to be able to pay the sheriff. So we've been doing that for a very long time as entrepreneurs, which I now call it bootstrapping. At that time, I didn't know what it was called. So we buy opportunities, we buy developments, we buy land that sometimes we buy it for a long time, for a long run. Sometimes we buy and we offload immediately. So there are those opportunities. So the strategy in real estate is to be able to, at any given time, to buy low, sell high. But the other part that is important for people to understand is that the price that you buy land, real estate, any commercial opportunity does not determine the price that you need to sell the unit or the land at. Because sometimes you can buy a distressed opportunity because it is distressed. You turn it around. It's like buying a business that is
Yes.
distressed.
I was about to ask if it applies to business.
Yeah, even in business, you buy a distressed business, you add value, you change management, you tweak certain things, you then sell it at a profit. So I think there is a misconception to say, but you bought the land for 50 million, why are you selling for 200 million? And the media has sort of didn't take the time to sort of educate people about those type of dynamics in business.
Do you think the media wanted people to know those things?
Well, I don't know.
So, looking at your journey, what do you think are some of the common mistakes people make when they get into the industry, especially the mistakes? You see, I've heard people say you can never go wrong with property. I'm sure you've heard that too.
Yeah.
And I remember telling someone, I said, no, you can go terribly wrong
Yeah.
with property if you don't do it right.
Yes.
So what are some of the mistakes that actually made sure those people don't get it right with property?
You know, I've made mistakes as well. We spoke about all these great things, but I've made mistakes in my life. I've made money. I've lost money. You know, I've bought houses. I've been having houses that have been repossessed. So any success comes with its own challenges, and entrepreneurs go up and down. But at the end of the day, you get to be able to be focused and learn from any situation that you may find yourself in. But one of the common mistakes that happens even in real estate is that people will buy investment units without looking and saying what are other expenses that are going to be there that are your blind spots. So, for example, you buy 5 units with the hope that you're going to be able to collect rental, but maybe you didn't calculate that there's actually levies. There's a state, property taxes that you need to look at. So when people do their model, they forget those. They say, well, I've got a unit that I bought for 500,000. I can be able to get 5,000 from this unit. I'm great. But later on, when they look at their model, there's a lot of other expenses. So we've made those type of mistakes. And I know a lot of property investors have done that, where now they're trying to get rid of units that are not adding up. So now you have to have a shortfall of 2,500 rand on each unit. It builds up. If you have that times 5, you end up in a situation where you can go bankrupt, and all those houses can be repossessed. So I always say to people, when you want to start real estate, sometimes don't look at the big deals and the big numbers. There's a lot of opportunities now in what we call the backroom units.
Yeah.
I'm a rental stock
Yes.
in the township. It's an easy entry, and the numbers are great. So there are those opportunities that you can be able to have a better entrance in that space, and that's a big industry on its own as well.
Absolutely. And then, guys, on the 5th of April 2025, we've got the It's More Than Just Money Business and Property Seminar in Northwest at the Royal Marang Hotel. We've got Rali Mampeule. He's a property mogul as well from Botswana. He's got a portfolio of over 1 billion pula. He's going to be one of our speakers on the day. Of course, I'll be there representing the It's More Than Just Money movement, as well as sharing key insights with you on the day. Please go out to Web Tickets, get the tickets, and of course, you need to get your hands on the It's More Than Just Money book so that we can continue to support the podcast and continue to bring you amazing guests that are going to share incredible insights with you for you to apply into your future. So when you look at your journey and the fact that you started off with a mentor, that speaks to networks and the ability to create networks. How did that and those partnerships help you scale in business?
Business about networking. That's why people play golf and other stuff. This day we've got an opportunity to be able to expose ourselves in social media and actually telling a story of what you're doing. And based on that, you're able to connect with other people. So networking is the biggest thing to do. So we were very fortunate enough to be in a position where we meet a lot of buyers who are coming from different industries. I mean, some of the units and people that we met during the time of mid-run when we were selling the townhouses are now CEO of big businesses and big, government agencies, banks, and all of that. So you end up building that network to say that the other day I met a lady who's a big CEO of a big bank in South Africa, and she said, "You sold me my first house." So that network helps you to say, well, now we are putting infrastructure for to connect people in Tembisa with internet. So, she was then saying, we also looking at opportunities to be able to fund digital infrastructure assets and opportunities that can be able to connect people with the internet. So that networking is very important, So we've used our networks, and through this real estate, one of the things that I wanted to say when you're talking about network is that when you look at real estate, you must not only look at it from a point of just real estate. You need to look at what other opportunities are there within the real estate. So we have now invested in a company called Metro Fiber, and we did a huge investment there. But the point there is that we make sure that we can be able to connect people with internet. We've invested in this new economy of people that are delivering pizzas and using the Uber Eats and bikes. We bought bikes and all of that so that we can be able to support some of the development that we are doing. So the networking has brought all those opportunities where you end up diversifying into a lot of other businesses that are not necessarily in real estate.
So I was about to ask that apart from real estate, what other streams of income did you diversify into?
Yeah.
But I hear you've answered that very well. But
Yeah.
you've also launched a property funding platform.
Yes.
Eh,
So yeah.
Can you tell us more about it and how it works?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, as I told you earlier on, so we've now created a fund called the SAHIF, the South African Housing and Infrastructure Fund. It's a $1 billion fund that has today delivered about 68,000 land housing opportunities in South Africa in the past 5 years. So we had a little bit of what we feel that was a little bit of success. And on that, we end up then launching the African Housing and Infrastructure Fund. And the fund has then also invested in the digital infrastructure businesses. Actually, that's a big business that we've invested in, and it's actually grown to become actually bigger than our core business. You know, we are now selling our stake at Metro Fiber for about 1.3 billion rand, and we've never sold a business at that level. You know, so that's why I was saying that it's so important to diversify into other spaces, and actually be surprised that business like McDonald's are actually not in the business of selling burgers. They're in real estate, you know, something that most people know. So whenever you know, they're in real estate because most of the units, buildings that they own actually give them that rental income. So we've diversified into digital infrastructure, we've diversified into financial sector. We have invested in a business that is going to have a blockchain exchange where you can be able to come and say, I want to raise 100 million for a mining, I want to raise 100 million for property, and you're able to list that. And somebody can be able to buy a token in China, in Australia, and you can be able to raise that money. I think that's where the sector is going. We've also invested, as I said, into the mobile businesses that are delivering the pizzas and other businesses around the country. So diversifying is a key thing so that when things go the other way, you are able to still be able to survive as an entrepreneur.
Awesome stuff. So, but you've built so much. What keeps you motivated, and what's next for you?
Yeah, you know, it's quite exciting because one of the things that really keeps us going now and that I'm really keen on, it's really community development. So you'll see in the next couple of years, we are going to spend a lot of time in different villages, especially in Limpopo, to better the lives of people. So we want to make sure that we can be able to put infrastructure in villages, assist schools that some of us went to in the villages. You know, there's an issue of saying, why can't the school that I end up graduating at say, Rand Park High School or Benoni High, it's got a PT area, it's got a sick room, it's got a pool. And I'm saying, why can't we have that Komukwaseli, where you don't need a lot of money. You can be able to turn a unit, one unit, or even build an extra room or use alternative building technology to be able to have a sick room where kids, you can't tell me that in the school in a village, people don't get sick. Some of the school that we went to had a sick room. So we want to be able to build sick rooms in schools in villages so that kids that are not well, they can be able to taken care of. We want to be able to donate computers. We want to be able to install internet in those schools in the villages so that kids can be able to use laptop and iPad. We want to be able to say, let's build a pool and be able to have somebody who can train the kids on how to swim. So there's nothing that stops those schools to be the same schools that some of us went to in what we call the suburbs. So those are some of the things that I'm really excited about, but also building infrastructure, sort of diversifying into bigger infrastructure to be able to address things like electricity, renewable energy. We want to be able to build schools. We want to be able to build bridges and dam to address shortage of water. So more diversifying into infrastructure development. So that's what we're looking forward to, so that we can be able to back the bulk that is needed to accelerate the delivery of affordable housing, because you need those things to be able to build houses. And that's what we are struggling with now in the country, not having bulk water and electricity.
So, what do you say to those young and ambitious guys that see you maybe rolling in a nice car? I mean, you're notorious for having nice cars. And just because you've put in the work over the years, what do you say to those young, ambitious guys that want to break into the industry and they're saying, I want to have I want to have nice cars. I want to do the industry because I want a Maybach. I want an RR.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I think for me is to say to a young person that is out there, I mean, right now, as you and I are sitting here, people are thinking about what I'm going to buy after I've had a look at this interview to eat, you know, versus them thinking about the Maybach. Of course, I'm sure they've got aspiration for that. But for me is to say today, instead of you sitting mhlambe ekhoneni, creating, ukhuluma nabanye abantu, well, but in the township somewhere, why can't you go and start doing something? And I'm just saying there are things that we should start doing. You know, as I said, even if it just means that go and deliver pizza today. Tomorrow there'll be somebody who can teach you how to drive a bike, how to get on a scooter, and be able to just go and deliver. You know, I was at Mall of Africa the other day taking my son to go watch a movie. I saw an old guy coming to pick up an order at a pizza shop. Really, really old gentleman
Going on a scooter to
going
deliver.
on a scooter to go deliver. So our young people should take over those opportunities. And you know, if you're gonna get your 10,000 rand, you are then able to do that. The other thing that young people should look at is opportunities where South Africa has got a lot of skills in terms of construction. You must start thinking to say it's not only people with money that can go overseas. London or UK is looking at South African builders, bricklayers, that they want to be able to bring them to England because the some people there are old. The generation is getting older, and Africa has got the youngest age group. So start looking and going on the internet and say, how can I go and build some do construction in the UK? And there are programs where you can be able, they can even help you to get on a flight and be able to work there and build. And that's how it could be an opportunity for you to say, I came to London as a bricklayer. Now I'm owning real estate. So I think let's not wait for the best moment. Try and start today and just get out there and do something today.
So, final words. What's the one thing that you want our audience to remember from this conversation? If there was that one thing that you want them to remember, what would it be?
You know, for me, is to say that I've seen all the stuff that we are doing as entrepreneurs, but one of the key things that helps us is to be able to have a family unit. I think as Black people, we need to have a family unit. Where possible, we should be able to be in a position where we are taking care of but who may not be able to have maybe a father or a mother. We should be able to try and have unit, because I think a lot of other races that I've seen, for them to be successful, they sort of have a bit of a family unit. I'm trying as a youngster who may have made mistake to say, how do I then focus and build from my own family, make my own kids to be better in life so that they can be able to have certain way on how to approach life, which can then be able to benefit the rest of the continent, of the country and the world. So I think having a unity of family, that's very important for me. And that's why I admire my wife and the long years that we've been together.
Yeah,
has
25
taught
years
me.
is a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
And it's been great. It's not even about the journey, it's really about the company that you're with. So I've just seen that family can turn things around where you are making mistakes and you realize that this is not the way to go. So one thing I want to leave with people is to say that let's try and have a unit and make sure that we are able to become a better society that has got, it's quite easier for you as a person to say, you know, if I'm doing this, what will my dad say? What will my mom say? When my mom reads about Rali stuff in the newspaper, what would she say? You know, and may her soul rest in peace. But my dad is still around. So so having a parent makes you to think twice. So I think we need to have that unit and be able to make sure that we can look after each other. So my main message is to say, let's keep on focus. Let's not allow some of the media to change our thinking. We must be proud and we must not hit each other as Black people. You know, we should be able to see and learn from mistakes that other people have done. We have a long way to go. If you look at countries like Nigeria, they support each other. The entrepreneurs there, they support each other. They'll post about what other entrepreneurs done. But here it's almost like every weekend we need to read about somebody that something has gone wrong. And we get excited and celebrate it and say, Nabatlo felt like guy. So we need to find a way to say, how do we work? We still don't own banks as Black people in this country. We still don't own insurance companies. We still don't have a lot of financial planners who are Black. So we have a long way before we can start laughing at each other. You mentioned other names earlier on. Those names, we need to learn and see if they have made mistake, where have they made the mistake, how do we better that? But it's very
Because
important
they
that
represent us.
they represent us. So it's very important that we understand that we still don't own those banks. We still don't own those insurance companies. We need to be united and work with each other.
How important is representation?
You know, I think when we do things, and it's like, you know, when you go and run a marathon, I saw a young gentleman who won a 100-meter somewhere at the last Olympics. You can see that young man, when he was running his own race without knowing. Now he's a world champion. And when he got back, you can see the excitement. So sometimes we do our best without actually knowing how it's going to come out, you know. And then if you become number one and you're the number one in the community, you can tend there to be able to lift others. You know, just like Prof. Bonang Mohale will say, lift as you rise,
Sure.
you know, and we need to do that. But being a role model or people looking up to you, sometimes it happens accidentally without you knowing. So, but the bottom line is that let's reduce just criticizing the people who may have made mistakes and actually start asking ourselves before we laugh to say, Ukai Jabu, who owns a bank? You know, I was in Rwanda the other day. One of my friends had to pay people, and she called somebody and say, I see you guys are closed. Can you be able to help me to get money? Because I want to pay these youngsters that were dancing, you know? And they made plans to do that. We don't have that power in this country where there are people, Baba Tseba, Utofunda Makelo next door because you own a bank to do certain things for you. But there are people that can call each other when the banks are closed and say, look, I'm buying this business. Can you help us that next week we can be able to buy this business? And when the banks open, that happens. They have that in Bryce and other places. So before we really start laughing at each other, let's start saying how many of us are owning the banks in this country as Black people and support each other.
Wow. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
And personally, I'm inspired by you. I'm inspired by your work, and
thank
I'm really proud. I'm really proud of what you've achieved, and thank you so much for coming to share your story. People don't know how many times we tried to sit down here.
No.
It took forever.
No, it took forever, but you know, today was the right timing. I'm happy to see this. I'm gonna buy myself a book today so I can be able to get the signature from you. I hope you've got copies for me to buy a copy so we can support. And these are great stuff, and I'm sure there's a lot in the books that we can all learn from. And well done on your podcast. I think it's a way for us to have a platform to share some of the issues that we dealt with earlier on. Thank you for you inviting us. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, guys. If you haven't subscribed, please remember to click on that subscribe button, click on the notifications bell so that you don't miss any of these inspiring interviews that are going to be shaping the way people think and the way people do things. From my team and I, broadcasting from Johannesburg, South Africa, it's more than just money. We'll see you in the next episode. Ciao, ciao.